Welcome to Better Teaching, Only Stuff That Works, a podcast for teachers, instructional coaches, administrators, and anyone else who supports teachers in the classroom. This show is a proud member of the BE Podcast Network, shows that help you go beyond education. Find all our shows at bepodcastnetwork.com. I am Gene Tavernetti, the host for this podcast, and my goal for this episode, like all episodes, is that you laugh at least once and that you leave with an actionable idea for better teaching. A quick reminder, no cliches, no buzzwords, only stuff that works. I'm very excited about my guest today. She is a teacher leader, not only in her home state of Wyoming, but in the United States as well, with some of the work that she has done in the Goyen Foundation. My guest today is Laura Stam, who's a second grade teacher in Thermopolis, Wyoming. She is letters trained, which stands for Language Essentials for Teachers of Reading, and served as a letters local certified facilitator. She is a founding board member of the Reading League Wyoming and contributes to promoting high quality literacy instruction across the state. She was selected as a Goyen Fellow for 2024 and to 2025. In this role, she applies her literacy knowledge to her classroom and mentors and fellow educators in implementing evidence-based literacy practices. Laura is driven by a passion for the science of learning and seeks out and applies the best instructional methods to teach children and to become great readers, writers, and thinkers. I think you're going to like this one. Laura, how are you? I am so excited. I've been looking forward to this all day.
I'm doing so well. I am so honored to be on your podcast today. Thank you so much. I'm excited.
I don't know how much of this you remember, but we met in real life in New York City. We were having breakfast and we just happened to be at the same table and we started to talk, who are you, where are you from, etc. And you're very nice. It was a very nice conversation. And then a few days later, you posted a picture of yourself, a selfie with somebody from the conference, and you posted that you were in New York City. And I didn't connect Stam, which is your Twitter handle, with
Yeah,
Laura.
yeah.
So it was very weird. I kind of had this weird thing like, wow, I hope I was nice enough to this person because, actually we've been following each other for quite a while, but the Stam kind of blew me away. So is that your recollection? Were we
Yes, I
okay?
was I was totally fangirling, I will admit. While I'm like, oh, I'm eating breakfast with Gene
Oh
Tavernelli.
my goodness.
So that was so fun though, just because a lot of the people I met on X, now I got to meet at that conference. That was a lot of fun meeting all those people. Yeah, yeah.
No, it was. And so was that your first research ed conference?
It was, and I loved it.
Okay. So you'll be going to
Yes.
Denver, I bet.
Yep. Yep. As soon as that gets ready to sign up, I'm headed over.
That's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is fun to see everybody. I just
Yeah.
wanted to go into a little bit more into your bio because there are some things that, you are a Goyen Fellow.
Correct.
Can you talk a little bit about the Goyen Foundation, what it does, how, what the process is to become a fellow? Because there aren't that many selected.
Right. So they identify the best reading teachers. It's a literacy focus. And those fellows create videos and share them on social media to help just to share what they're doing in their classroom with other teachers. And so the application process, you fill out just an application, and then if you're selected, then you have to film a lesson that you teach, and then they go through that film and select just a few applicants. I think this fellowship, I think, has 13 or 15 fellows. I think when I got selected, I think they said there were over 200 that applied. I don't know how many have applied this time, but I think they're in the process right now of selecting the next cohort. But yeah, so it's a little intimidating. You're just filming yourself and hoping you get picked. But it's really you with the fellowship, you meet a lot of amazing teachers because we meet every month and we share stuff with each other. We have meetings every Sunday or once a month on Sundays too, and each of us present something specific we're doing in our classroom. So we learn from each other, and then what we're sharing online, we get to watch each other. And it's K-12, and it's reading and or general ed and specialist educators that get to be part of it. So you have this really nice mix of everything. And so you can see what's happening in secondary and elementary and interventionists and special ed. Then we even have a science teacher, how she's incorporating literacy in her science group. So it's really amazing the people that you get to connect with and network with, and then so much that you learn from all of them. So
So how many videos have you posted like throughout the year? You have any idea?
I was looking, the YouTube channel is Science of Reading Classroom. And I was looking the other day, and I think I have maybe 15 that I've done. A lot
Wow.
too many. But I and now I've started posting just on my own, just other things, because I've been doing some math stuff, and I've been wanting to share that. So I just post that on my own. So I actually really like doing it now, which is
Well,
surprising because that's
it,
not how I used to be at all.
well, it's not how you used to be, and I think it's a testament to the to your commitment to get better and to share, with folks, because a lot of people would not do what you have done, especially that many times, because people can be, I don't know if you know this, people can be critical.
Yeah, no, it hasn't happened yet. I'm sure it will, but it hasn't happened. People have been very kind. But I just remember when I was first starting, I started watching some videos. It wasn't a lot, but there were people posting some videos of their classroom and their instruction, and how much I got out of what I learned from that, just because you can read about how to do something and you can hear about it on a podcast. But then to see how it's actually working in a classroom with children, I mean, it's raw and it's real,
Yes,
but they're still
yes.
able to do it. I think that has a lot of power for teachers. This is what a real teacher is doing in their real classroom. And so when I first started doing it, I just thought of how helpful it was for me. And these are not fancy videos, they're just, on their phone, and they're not professional, but it still gave me a lot to learn from. And so I thought, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to film it. And I think it'll help other teachers because it helped me.
I'm sure it has. I have heard other teachers comment not only about the content, but just thanking you for doing it, for being
Oh,
vulnerable like that. But that's not the
yeah.
only leadership things duties that you've taken. You were instrumental in getting the Reading League into Wyoming.
Correct. Now, I can't take all the credit, but yeah, so I'm one of the founding board members of the Reading League. And I'm hoping I get the dates right because we just had our 1 year anniversary in February. So we started last February, but we started like the June or July before that. Anyway, we got it done super fast. I think it was 8 or 9 months. And because we wanted the Reading League and we knew how important literacy was. And so all of us collectively together, we just pushed it through. So that was a lot of fun. Because we're from all across the state, and we just got together, and Claudia Ladd is our president. She's kind of one that organized all of us and just found some really good, talented people to bring together. And so we've been able to do a virtual event almost every month, all kinds of, really good webinars. And then we have a conference in Wyoming, a literacy conference called Embracing Literacy. And we were able to do a lot with embracing literacy, and we're doing that again this year in June. So we help support that a lot. And so it's been really neat to connect with Wyoming teachers, especially in Wyoming, because Wyoming is really rural and really spread out. And so finding your people is a little bit more difficult. And
Yeah.
so the Reading League Wyoming is really helpful for bringing us all together and having that common language and really sharing what we are learning and doing and growing in literacy.
Well,
So. Yeah.
those both of those things I think are kind of indicative of why I wanted you to be on this podcast. And I think
Oh,
the
well, thank
overarching
you.
theme is that just being a learner, even though you're recognized as like, I want to get better. I want to get better. And it was, you posted something as stamps on Twitter. You responded to a podcast guest that I had on. And I think it was somebody who does coaching and instructional coaching. And then you made a comment, something like, boy, I wish I had a coach, or I can't remember exactly what you said.
Yeah, something like I would love to have someone just look at my work and just really help critique and help me refine what I'm doing. That's what I
Well,
wanted.
because of everything that you've talked about so far, I mean, you are exactly the type of teacher who I like to work with. I mean, it's so rewarding for me. And
Oh,
so
good.
I jumped on that right away. I contacted you right away and said, how would you like to do this? To do some coaching. And you said yes.
Yes, I
And so
did. I said, of course.
we started doing it. Well, the of course, and I kind of want to talk about that a little bit because not every teacher, not every experienced teacher is interested in that at all. So I kind of want to delve into a little bit about why you thought you wanted to do this, and then just kind of talk through to the process. Before we get started, I just want to say it was the first time, and I told you this, it was the first time that I did this virtually
Oh, yeah.
because I always do coaching cycles and I wasn't sure how it was going to work, but what made it easier is you have 50 videos out there and I was
Right.
able to see you. I was
Um,
able to see you because I think that's something that I know that some teachers fear being coached because here some person is going to say they're going to help them get better, but they don't even know who they are.
right.
So that was appreciated to have that resource. And so we decided on a date, that we would get together and you had sent me a video. And
Yeah.
I remember, we got on the Zoom and I told you how
Mhm.
excited I was, you know, to do this. Do you remember what you said?
No, what did I say?
You, you said, well, I'm glad you're excited because I was in tears.
Well, like you said, I've done a lot to educate myself because I just haven't had those opportunities. Those opportunities I've had to find myself. And so I brought a lot of stuff in and I've tried a lot of stuff. And I feel like I have this whole modge of stuff going on. But just even though I might be considered experienced, this analogy came to me, and a few summers ago, my father-in-law taught me how to paint a landscape. And something really powerful I learned from that experience is almost like you paint a little bit, and then he'd have me step back and look at the painting and as a whole. And then he'd say, okay, what can we do now? And then I go back in and I do something small. It wasn't anything big, something small. And I'd step back and just that stepping back. And so when you're a teacher in the middle of it, it's hard to see what it's hard to see that yourself. It's hard to step back and look at that. So I think however experienced or unexperienced you are, having another person stepping back and looking at that for you. And my father-in-law did the same thing. He would look at that for with me as well, and he would give me advice because he's an expert and a professional. Look at that, give me advice, and it was just little things like, okay, go, why don't you add some color here or add something here. And that, so that when the coaching thing for me, that's what it was, is I needed someone to come from the outside and look at the whole picture for me because I just needed to get some things refined. And that's what you were able to do for me. So yes, that's why I was in
So
tears.
had you ever had any coaching before aside from what you had done, watching videos that you had done yourself?
No, not officially. I mean, I've had, other teachers come observe and they give you feedback. And so that's kind of just the extent of like official of real observing, but not coaching, no. So that's
Okay.
all brand new.
Okay. So let kind of, if you could kind of talk about what your experience was, kind of walk through what we did and what you got out of it, what you took away, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, so we met, it's watched my video, but what was impressed with was all the questions you asked. And I'm going to mix a lot of things up, so hopefully that's okay. But you asked a lot of questions, and some of the questions that really impacted me were you had taken the time to look at the lesson because I'd done a core knowledge lesson, and you went and looked up that lesson on what should be in there. So you knew what it should look like. You knew what that I had adapted it. And so you ask questions about that, like what was my thinking behind adapting that lesson? I also thought it was interesting that you wanted more than just one video. You wanted to have just so you could get an idea of what my teaching was like, not just in that moment. You also, I'm trying other things. I'm losing my train of thought, but just, I was just so impressed with how thorough you were. And I realized this isn't just a, oh, that looks great. Maybe just tweak a few things. This was something that you took very seriously. And this was something that I just felt like that you genuinely cared about helping me improve my practice. And that's kind of an overall picture I got from that. And
Okay.
so, yeah.
I was just gonna say, as much as I, wanted to improve your practice or help you improve your practice, it's about improving practice. I mean, you're a nice person, but my goal is to help improve instruction. It's always a benefit, when you're helping somebody, who's nice. But were there any surprises in the type of feedback that you got? Again, since you didn't have any experience in coaching, were there any surprises in the types of things that we talked about?
Well, I think we agreed on the thing I needed to work on was efficiency. But I was surprised you just gave me really actionable things I could do in my classroom. And you essentially gave me the FAST framework that you talk about in your book, but it was things that were really easy for me to take and apply to my classroom. In fact, I did it the next day. I took exactly what and I took a lesson and I adapted it right away because it was so concrete and so not simple. I wouldn't call it simple, but something very those aren't the right words, but just something very practical that I could apply right away. It wasn't ambiguous and it wasn't generic. It was specific, very specific feedback on this is what you need to do and this is how you do it. And but at the same time it would work with any lesson that I taught. So it wasn't like, okay, the next lesson you're teaching is this, and I'm going to tell you how to do that. You just gave me some really specific framework. I like the word framework to work with on and how each one of those parts works. Now, I don't know if you want me to go into all those parts, but
Well, one of the
Mhm.
things I just wanted to reinforce or to make sure that folks listening understand, that was the importance of seeing all the videos of you and knowing what you did. Because what we're trying to do within that framework, take who you are and a lot of the structures that you already have and all the routines that you've done with your kids and just move them around a little bit, instead of doing it here, do this here, et cetera. Because I think that's one of the things that teachers are concerned about. They're worried about when they're working with a coach is like somebody's going to come in and say everything you do is wrong. And
Right.
that's not true. It's never true. It's never true. So, like I say, I think that's what you said, but I just wanted to reinforce that.
Oh
I
yeah,
have
you
to,
were
yeah.
very kind and pointed out the good things I was doing. Yes. And you took everything I was doing, but just put it in, just help me refine it. So I didn't feel like I was being attacked. I didn't feel like I had to redo everything. I didn't have to feel like I had like I'd been doing everything wrong this whole time. It was more like, it was like that, like doing that painting. It's like stepping back and like, okay, this looks good overall, but we need to do something here. We need to add some color here. We need to add a tree here. That's what it felt like for being coached.
So we're going to start about talk about some specific things. So what are some specific things that after we were together that you started thinking about differently, or however
Well,
you want to talk about it?
okay. The learning objective. Let's talk about the learning objective. And then I sent you a message about this because when I was reading your book, you have this part about teachers rolling their eyes about learning objectives. And I am that teacher. If I hear anything more about learning objectives and that they have to be posted in your room, I mean, I've never, anyway, we all know why we don't like learning objectives. And you have changed my whole view on learning objectives because you gave me something that, so the learning objective you gave me was write 3 sentences describing the Oregon Trail. And I've never written a learning objective that way before. It's always, well, it might be describe the Oregon Trail, but but we don't define how we're going to describe that. And you gave me something very specific. So I knew exactly, and my kids knew exactly what they were going to do. They were going to write 3 sentences. And then describing the Oregon Trail, well, then that's simple. And then what I loved is my favorite thing that I got out of it was the key ideas. And you have like the model you gave me, there's several models that you have, and I looked at them in your book. They're really good. But the one you had was like a tree. So you have well, it was like a main idea and then 3 subsections. And but what I liked about that was I introduced that at the beginning. And then as we were going through the lesson with my students, we knew that those were the 3 parts we were going to be searching for as we went through this lesson. And so what I really liked is they became partners in that lesson and they were looking for those things. They knew what they were looking for. And I think that is so powerful for the students and the teacher because then the teacher knows these are the 3 things I need to be emphasizing. And I don't need to spend maybe so much time on this, but I do because I want to make sure these are the things that are important. So, and then as I was giving the lesson, when we come to one of those 3 parts, we'd stop and we just write some things down as a class and put that down. So that's all built for them. And then the other thing is the learning objective is the same thing as your independent practice. And so when it came to independent practice, we had built that key idea chart together and they could just take it and go without any. And then if I need to support a few students, but the majority of my class is ready to take those ideas because we'd found them and we talked about them and we'd written them down. And it was exactly what we taught is exactly what they did in independent practice. Those were, and there's a lot more to your framework. And it's been really interesting to read as I go through your book to read all those parts. So it'll be good to like put all those other parts in. But those 2 parts were just like huge for me and huge for my lessons.
And I think, going back to what you had expressed as the main thing that you wanted to work on, and that was make the lessons move more quickly.
Yes.
I think many times when you're working with a teacher and that's the goal, they don't look at the structure. It's like, what do I need to do faster? Well, if you look at the
Mhm.
structure, then, we begin to, all of the science of learning stuff, we begin to understand what is the germane cognitive load, what's superfluous, what's irrelevant. And so things kind of fall away and you're able to have that focus, and like you say, the kids now are with you.
Right.
And so,
I'm going to take this from your book because what you said, what teachers need to be aware of is working memory and attention. And when you're aware of those 2 things, then, but that's great, right? working memory and attention. Well, what does that look like? So that's what I really appreciate is then you give us a framework in order to make that happen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it allows, as a teacher, to evaluate the lesson objective. Wow, is that too much?
Hmm.
Is that going to take too long?
Hmm.
And I think that's one of the things that when I'm working with teachers, I want them to take away is, some ability, some criteria to make decisions about their lessons in the future. It's not about the lesson that we do together, like you said. It's like, how do we generalize this stuff? Because we need to, it's a lot of work, planning
It is a lot
lessons.
of work.
So
Hmm.
if you have a structure, so if today we're doing Oregon Trail, well, tomorrow we could do name whatever it is, and it's the same
Yeah.
lesson, it's the same
Hmm.
lesson. And it just makes it easier for the kids. Then the kids know what to expect. And then the other thing that you didn't talk about that made it easy to do this with you is that you had already taught the what is it, expanded sentences reading
Yes.
revolution. So
Yes.
again, we're embedding things that the kids already knew how to do. So we're just putting new content in with a skill that they can continue to practice.
Right. That
So
they're already familiar with. Oh, yeah.
which again is was the thing that was impressed me, was one of the things that were most impressive about you as I listened to you talk and watch your videos, how you were able to synthesize ideas and put them together. You took science of reading, science of learning, all of, writing revolution, all of these things, and you made them your own, and you made them a coherent lesson.
Yeah. Something that was surprising though. So I this is the fourth year teaching this content. So I'm very familiar with it. I'm very familiar with writing revolution sentences or questioning and sentence stems like because I have those built in when we're discussing the lesson, not just in writing and other things. But when I decided to do the fast framework for a lesson, I was really surprised how cognitively overloading that was. So the things that I just used to do automatically, I didn't script those parts because before I could just do them without kind of having to go through a script. But when I added that in, I wasn't able to do all those parts anymore. And that was really surprising. And so I kind of thought that would be interesting to bring up for teachers who are trying something new, especially if you're changing the whole way you deliver a lesson that you will want to script all the things that you are used to doing in there as well because it took all of my working memory or whatever you want to call it to focus on that and I couldn't just ad lib what I normally ad lib because I wasn't able to do that. And that was really surprising but really interesting and I thought that would be valuable information to know as a
Could,
teacher.
yeah, could you clarify a little bit what you mean by script? Because that's another word that, we see the eyes roll, when we see a script, but this is something that you created. It wasn't a script that I gave you or anything. You, as a teacher, when you were going to teach this, realized something that made you create.
Right. So my lessons are normally in a slide deck that I've built. And in the slide deck, I have questions built in, and they're in the slide deck so that I don't have to think about them. But I've done it so often that I actually don't really have to look at the questions on the slide deck. I kind of know what questions to ask as they come up. But I, because I changed the whole way I was delivering this lesson, I didn't even use the slide deck. I went straight from all my children have their own reader. So I just had a reader under the document cam and I followed the FAST framework. But because I didn't have those questions that were already written, and so even though I don't really need those questions anymore because I know them, because was also changing my lesson structure, I couldn't remember I couldn't just in the moment come up with really good questions to ask them within the lesson like I normally do. I don't know if I'm explaining that correctly.
You are,
So the
yeah.
scripting part is I needed to write out the questions And then that's it. So that was something you brought up in our second session was, now I want you to give them, when you have them do a turn and talk, give them sentence frames. And I hadn't done that first lesson because, and that was part of it because I was having to focus on the change in my lesson structure. But it wasn't hard to add back in. It was just something that I actually had to write and think about, which I didn't think I'd have to do because I was so used to doing it before. So I think that's
But
important to understand, something
yeah,
that just because you're used to doing it before, if you add something new and big like that, it won't be easy to do. So you want to make sure that you have thought about that again and have that written out somewhere so you're not
well,
having to think about it in the moment, I guess.
just as we can give too much to kids during a lesson, it's
Mhm.
easy to overload a teacher during a coaching cycle. And so I think what's going to happen now is you have this structure, and we had a couple of, coaching sessions. As you read the book, you'll see, okay, okay, and then you'll
Mhm.
be able to add that back. But you said, I'm glad I asked you to explain the scripting a little bit more, because and you even said it, you're gonna hear those words in the book, okay? And that
Right.
is, in the moment, it's difficult to come up with better questions. The questions that are in, and I don't mean to demean any curriculum or anything, but they're very right there questions. They're, for the kids. So how'd they get to California? Oh, they were on the Oregon Trail to get to California. What did they take to get to California? That's not, the kids are
Right.
way
Right.
more capable. Now, coming up with a question that they are capable of, where they have to think a little bit, those are harder to do on the spot. So
Right.
anybody listening, I don't want teachers to think, oh, now I have to script lessons. No, you're already using a PowerPoint. Put those good questions right in there, then you won't forget. But you're exactly right. That's the hard part, when you're doing it. Like, what's a good question here? Because if you don't, the default is the lower level questions. And
Right.
uh,
Right.
yeah, yeah.
Right. Right. Yes. I was reading a Substack, SOL in the Wild, I think is what it's called. And he had this quote in here, and this just really reminded me. This, I think, just really described the FAST framework really well. And it was, he asked the questions, what do my students truly need to learn? And what do they need for me to change their long term memories? And I think that this framework, I think, really helps ensure that you're not just adding a lot of fluff for the sake of fluff, and that you, and we know that we need to be focused, but I think you just really help. This framework really helps actually put the focus on the focus. I'm not sorry, that's kind of a weird way to say that, but I just,
Ah,
when I read
you're
those
getting back to learning
questions,
objectives, aren't you? You're getting back to the
right?
focus.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, but yeah, and because am I really truly, is what I'm teaching truly what my kids need to learn? And am I going to change their long-term memories in the way I'm presenting this? And so and that's hard. It's easy to say we need to do that. And it's hard to see it in action. And how do we really do that?
Well, you know what? You said one thing. I want to unpack it a little bit. You said that we talked about your lesson. The next day you went in and you changed it. How did you say it? You changed it. You completely changed it. But you know what? If somebody watched you the first day and watched you the second day, I don't think they would think that. They wouldn't see that many things overtly that were different. But I think what was different is what was going on in your head,
Right.
how you
Right.
thought about it, because you had a preview with the kids, asked them a question, there was a learning objective. I mean, you went through it just like you had before, but there were some changes in your thinking, in your focus, and like what you just talked about, what do I really want them to learn? But it doesn't look different. And I wanted to kind of emphasize that, because I think when teachers hear, oh, they want me to do everything different, you know what? You're going to find out, you're going to be able to take what you do and it's just moving a few things around, tweaking. A lot of times it's emphasizing one thing and de-emphasizing something else, that you like to do, or moving it to another lesson or something. So, do you have any advice for teachers who are hesitant about being coached?
Oh my goodness. Well, you should embrace it. Because it is intimidating, especially if you're not confident. And I don't, and teachers aren't going to say they're not confident, but we're all very, we're all very sensitive to being criticized. I mean, that's just being human, I guess, too. And so, but a really good coach isn't coming in to criticize you. And good teachers have a lot of good things they are doing. And I like that you clarified what you said, that it wasn't like I changed everything around. It was just, it really, it was just a few little refining things. And it wasn't a lot of things, just a couple things. It just made me aware of like putting some things into place. But it wasn't a big overhaul. And I didn't feel like I was that I was a bad teacher before. I just felt like, and so a teacher, it's just nice to have someone come in and help you. And it's just like any art, like all great artists always have feedback from other people. Anyone who writes anything always has someone looking over that for them. And it's just like that. It's not because you're not a good writer, it's because you are a good writer, it's because you are a good teacher. You are a good teacher. And so it's nice to have someone come in and show you what you are doing right and just how you can be an even better teacher than you already are. That's how I would look at it.
Yeah, we met twice,
Mhm.
and I'm thinking what we didn't get, what we didn't have that always want to happen first is some sort of training about what we're doing. And it gets back to your stepping back on your picture. It's like, what's the big thing that we're after here? And we kind of had to piece that together the first time we met. But
Mhm.
if you know like what the big picture is, and then we're going to take a look at each of these components, and then you see how they go together. I think, it helps make sense. And I think that's something that's important, that I always tell coaches that when I train coaches, this needs to make sense. You're not in there to show how smart you are and, oh, you know how I would do it. It's not about that. It's about how are we going to help these kids learn this content given all the things that this teacher does and to be able to utilize that teacher's strengths.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yes, for sure.
so anything else that you want to talk about with regards to the coaching experience? Any big takeaways, generalizations on anything?
I appreciated that there were just a few things the first time, and then the second time, just a few more things. So it wasn't a lot of stuff, but just a few, just do a few little tweaks here and a few little tweaks there. They weren't, I felt, and, but then, and things that were measurable, I think might be the best word. Things that you could say, what that you were easy to test if you did it or not, or did it right or not. They weren't ambiguous changes. They were specific, actionable changes that you could tell if you'd done it right or not. The other thing too is you were very good about saying it's not going to go well the first time. And that was true. Like just just my cognitive overload of applying that and figuring out, and then me forgetting to do other parts that I already did in my lessons. But at the same time, even though it felt like I agree, disagree that and I disagree because it still went right because it was a change that needed to happen, and the change was really good. And it felt good to make that change and make my lesson going in the right direction. So even though it was a rough start, it felt good to make that change. And then the kids, it was rough for my kids too. Like they didn't really know how to respond. It was a little bit different from what they were used to. And so they were a little hesitant too and didn't quite get it that first lesson. But by the second and the third lesson, they really got really used to it. And when we'd fill out the chart, they really liked that part and really being part of that. And so the first independent practice didn't go very well because they just weren't making that connection of what we were doing. But by the third independent practice, they realized what the key idea outline was and how that was helping them with their independent practice. So even for your students, my students, it was a little difficult. But even though the first lesson, like you said, isn't going to go well, it still felt good to make that change. And
Well,
it was okay that it didn't go well.
yeah. And I think an experienced coach knows what to expect in the first time.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, it didn't go great, but you know what? This is exactly the progression. And kind of and it's not going to take long, like you said, by the third time, everybody's got it. And you never have to talk about it again. They're with you. You're embedding your expanded sentences, you're expanding your writing revolution stuff. I mean, everything is there. So well, it was really fun working with you, Laura. I got to say, and I can't wait to have more conversations with you as you go through the book,
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
because I think you'll see a lot of reinforcement, a lot of the questions that probably would have been answered during a training. You'll get to see those. So here
Yeah.
I've been grilling you for 45 minutes. You have any questions for me?
Okay, so I am totally stealing this question from Craig Martin, but I really like this question. And I'm going to tweak it a little bit because I know that you're a coach, but you used to teach, correct? Is that
Mhm.
correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So I want to know what your favorite failure was from when you were a teacher. And the reason I ask is because I think it's a relief for teachers to know that experts the experts were not always experts. So that's why I want to ask that question.
Well, I appreciate you asking that, and I understand why you asked that, but I didn't know this at all. So, so a PE teacher, I was a cliche. I wanted to coach. I didn't
Oh,
want to
okay.
teach. I wanted to be a
Oh,
coach. The irony was that I was a really good teacher. That was my strength as a coach.
oh wow.
Teaching techniques, putting things together, you know, stacking our things that we have learned so that we could perform. But I didn't know how to do that in the classroom. And I'm just going to say the whole classroom experience is like PTSD. Okay. I can't think of anything that I would say, man, I was really good at this. But you know what? I knew it, but I didn't know how to do it. But let me tell you as a coach, okay, I can
Okay.
tell you what failures as a coach. And that is, I have several guidelines, several rules, okay, that are important to follow. One of them we talked about at the beginning of this when we were talking about the coaching was to be sure that I have seen the teacher teach. I've been in the classroom. I know, how just kind of a little bit how they operate as a teacher. When I have broken that rule and tried to give advice before seeing that teacher, all these wonderful things that you said about the experience, that never had a chance to occur because there was a wall, up right away. You don't know me. How dare you tell me how to do this? And I don't even know if what I was saying was right, in retrospect, because I didn't do my preparation. So how is that analogous to teaching? There are some things you got to script. There are some non-negotiables that if you don't do that, you're going to get to the end of the lesson and go, darn it, I know I needed to do that, but I thought I could get away with it. So I think it's that. And I've had times, again, analogous situations like being too cute. And I think elementary teachers, if we're not thinking about cognitive load, it's real easy to get cute. You know, let me read you this story. You know, it's going to be a preview of something, but the kids get so excited about the story, it's very difficult to bring them back to actually do the lesson. I remember one time I worked with a really good teacher and lots of good things, you know, and there was just a couple small things to talk about. And so talked about all the things that had gone well, talked about how he thought about it, and you know, do you always do this? Yada yada yada. And then as a joke, I said, well, you know what? They're going to take my test license away if I don't have, you know, give you one idea about how to get better. I thought that was funny. I thought it was cute. And the test license was cute because I am Tess. You know, nobody's going to fire me. But you know what you know what that teacher did?
What?
Went straight to the principal and told the principal, all this guy is doing is looking for what's wrong.
Oh,
And so I learned not to be too cute. You know, I learned to have my script, you know, like the questions that I asked you at the end of the lesson, it's the same questions I ask every time, you know, because I know it works. And kind of the same thing, you're going to have those concept maps and you're going to use them all the time because you know they work. So how would I bottom line that with regard to failures is know what works, don't get too cute, and if something doesn't work, then you know what to go back to. But I don't, you know, I've been around a long time, Laura. I mean, you know, like I've just been doing coaching for over 20 years, you know.
okay. Yes.
So so when somebody asks me, "Oh, when did you teach?" Geez, you know, last century, you know, sometime. And so it's almost not even relevant anymore
Yeah.
because I've had a chance to work with good teachers like you and to see so many good things. That's what I'm sharing. I'm not sharing what I did because I'm not nearly as good as most of the teachers that I work with now.
Oh, nice. No, that's really valuable. That's really valuable just to, yeah. Well, and there is a lot of correlation between coaching and teaching, and I think that's really valuable. And I think, like what you said about being cute, and you did kind of apply that to a teacher. Yeah, sometimes we want to be cute, but it's not really helpful. And so we just need to, yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Yes. To get them
Yeah.
to focus.
Yeah.
Laura, it has been wonderful. And I didn't call you Sarah one time
Oh,
today.
good. Yeah. Good job.
And yeah, it's been great. Let's stay in touch. And
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
if you're enjoying these podcasts, tell a friend. Also, please leave a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. You can follow me on Blue Sky at G Tavernetti, on Twitter, X, at G Tavernetti, and you can learn more about me and the work I do at my website, tesscg.com. That's TESSCG.com, where you will also find information about ordering my books, Teach Fast, Focused, Adaptable, Structured Teaching, and maximizing the impact of coaching cycles.